Welcome back to the Deuce and the Grab Lot podcast. This is episode number 31. I'm Ben. That is Michael. That is Peter DiBiase. Delighted to be joined with here tonight to discuss what arguably is the game of the year. A lot of anticipation coming into this game, a lot of storylines that we'll get into, a lot of fun facts. It should be a good one. But I want to kick it off by introducing our guest here, Peter DiBiase. He's been on before. How you
Welcome
doing
back.
tonight, Peter?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, it's fun to be back. I always enjoy talking about the Bills. I actually got done this morning recording. I have my own podcast recording my divisional preview that we broke down all of the games, and obviously we touched on the Bills. But I'm happy just to kind of focus on the Bills. So appreciate you guys having me on. Of
Yeah, for
course.
sure. We're happy that you're here. It's again, this is I've a lot of people have toted around. This is game of the year. And it has sort of that feel to it. With the way these both of these quarterbacks are playing, and sort of the hype that this game's getting, and the attention, and the split between these two fan bases. It's kind of been crazy for the past part, and you just knew it was coming for not almost over a month. Like everybody felt like this was going to happen, and we're here now, and it's fun. I think an under overlooked storyline, not really talked about, has been Tre'Davious White. This is his return to Buffalo for the very first time, and I know he's not very good anymore, but I do think that it's something to look at. There's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
I totally
Um,
forgot he was a Raven. God,
yeah, he
that's
is.
feels weird.
He's a Raven now,
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna
and
be
so that was
weird.
something I thought about. But I think obviously the big one that stands out is these two quarterbacks and the way they're playing. Sort of the smear campaigns that are going up against each other, and sort of it's just game of the year. It really has to be. But obviously, these two teams played in week 4, and it did not go the Bills' way whatsoever. And it was a total disaster. The Ravens dominated from pretty much start to finish, other than that brief period in the start of the third quarter, where the Bills had a little bit of momentum and it was killed by arguably the dumbest trick play of all time. So I want to go to you guys and kind of pass it around and get our thoughts on what that game was. And really, what's different between now and week 4 between these two teams? I'll go to you first, Peter. You're our guest. What do you have to say about that?
The obvious is the injuries, right? Terrell Bernard,
Right.
Matt Milano, Teron Johnson. They're not playing that game. I don't need to touch
Hmm.
on that if you're on social media. But 80,000 different people have tweeted that, so you kind of got that. But I think if you dig deeper into what is different about this Bills team heading into this divisional round, I think it's the offense, right? And I think at that time of the year, we were still figuring out who this offense was, right? It's coming off
Right.
an offseason where you lost Gabe Davis and you lost Stephon Diggs, and it was the kind of saying or the mantra of everyone eats. And it looked
Right.
good for the first 3 games. Then they ran into that skid against Baltimore, and they ran into that skid against Houston, where they really didn't put good offensive performances on the field. They had times, but first half against Baltimore was not good. First half against Houston was not good, right? So after that Baltimore game, you were like, well, everyone eats is cool, but is everyone that is eating good enough to eat, basically, right? Like, do
Right.
they have the
Right.
weapons? Obviously, it allowed them to go get Amari Cooper because Brandon Bean kind of realized we kind of need someone else. But I think the offense has changed. I think they lean into James Cook more than they did at that point. The offensive line has kind of blossomed into a really good offensive line. They only allowed a handful of pressures against Denver, and Denver was an elite pass rush group. So I think offensively they're different. They're more dynamic. They kind of everyone has an identity. Matt Collins is more involved. I think the offense has grown from what we saw earlier in the year, and I think that's probably the main focus for me when we're talking about what has changed outside of the obvious of 3 key guys coming back from injury.
Right. Right. What do you have to say about that, Mike?
Honestly, I was gonna say something really similar. I feel like the everyone eats, thing kind of started really working out more towards the end of the season into now because they
Hmm.
found out what everyone likes to eat. They found out what scheme and what route tree and just what works for everybody to make this offense just kind of flow in a way better direction than it did during that fourth and fifth game of the season.
Yeah.
I just feel like ever since that Amari Cooper trade, even though I mean he hasn't had like massive games, but he's kind of brought stability to that room to where it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
For sure.
you know, let's go, like we got this.
Yeah. Totally agree. I couldn't. I mean, I was probably share the similar thoughts that you guys just had. It's really. It's. I think they just haven't found their identity at that point. Even though they won their first 3 games, they looked great, things were going well. It's early in the season. It's really that's just the end of it. And I think knowing that it's early in the season, these teams are completely different. Teams get worse, teams get better. That's just the fact of the NFL. That's always going to be a part of it. And week 4, the Bills are not that same team. And, we didn't talk about the injuries because, it's obvious. The Bills obviously are better with those 3 players in the lineup. But I think an underrated fact is those 3 players help out in the run department a lot. Like Derrick Henry went crazy. First play of the game, 80-yard touchdown. Why is that? Because the defense didn't have the pieces to keep up with him. They just didn't have the talent.
No
And
one does really.
even
I,
nobody really does, but you need to have your guys. You can't go into that game shorthanded and thinking it's going to work out for you because it's not. They're just too good. They're too talented. And I looked at this Bills defense. Even Taylor Rapp, he played for maybe a quarter in that
Mhm.
game. So that I look
Shakir
at
got
those
knocked out
four
of that game
pieces.
too, if I'm
He
not
did as
mistaken.
well. He did as well. And I look at those 4 pieces: Bernard, Milano, Rapp, Taron Johnson. Those are all 4 major communicators on the Bills defense. They control things. They make sure things are ready to go before the snap. They're talking to each other. They're making sure they're in the right spot, right place at the right time. Is Bale Inspector and Dorian Williams and Cole Bishop doing that? Probably not. And so I think it matters a lot. And I looked at the stats without Milano and Johnson in the lineup. It's nearly a yard more per carry that they're giving up without those guys in the lineup. It's insane. And really, the Bills need those guys. They help out, and they're physical. They can get in there. They're smaller guys, and I think that's the big message that a lot of people are spreading. This is a smaller team, but they play bigger than their size. And I think having those guys in that lineup add a little bit of the dog back into the fight that the Bills just didn't have in that game. And yeah, like you said, you guys kind of said it. It just this offense was still feeling themselves out. They didn't know what these guys were going to do yet, and they figured it out now, and that's why this offense is red hot.
I feel like the offense moved from the everybody eat movement more into like let's establish the run, whether
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to be
Yeah,
something with Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, and James Cook. Like if you can get one of them going in some capacity, it just opens up everything.
for sure. And I think another big element is Alec Anderson. Like they love this 6 offensive lineman, and that just adding that sort of that another bruiser in there and the run game that can kind of establish like we're not going to lay over. We're gonna bring the fight to you. And I think that's been another dimension and element to this offense that's been very impressive. Um, so I think we got to talk about this Ravens offense though, because it's amazing. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's freaking good, and it's like, how the hell do you stop it? Because you got Derrick Henry, you got Lamar Jackson who's playing at a very very high level. Whether he's an MVP or not, that's for another time. I'm sure we all feel very strongly about that. But it's a good offensive line, and they're just so hard to beat, man. So I'll go to you first, Peter. What does this offense do so well, and what kind of scares you the most with this team, with their offense?
Yeah, you can't really stop it, right? Like
No,
it's the Chiefs offense or it's the Lions offense or it's the Bills offense. You can't stop it, but you can limit it. You can make it harder. You can limit their possessions. And
for sure.
yeah, the Ravens offense, it's dynamic, right? And if you watch that Pittsburgh game on last Saturday, their read option offense is tough to stop, right? And when you have Derrick Henry and you have Lamar Jackson stopping that read option offense is really tough, right? And it also
It's crazy.
Pittsburgh was lifeless, which was very
Yeah,
disappointing for if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in a rivalry game in the playoffs. They were lifeless. They weren't tackling basically into the second half, and Baltimore got out early, right? In order
right.
to kind of slow down the Ravens, or what they do so well is obviously the read option and they run the ball, but then it opens up kind of the over the top passing. And if you get beat on these big passes or if you give up long runs to Derrick Henry, you are going to lose. So basically what you kind of have to do is mentioned it a minute ago, you have to limit them. You have to find a
Yeah,
way to limit their possessions. You can't be giving up 40 to 50-yard runs to Derrick Henry. You are going to lose. You have to let them earn it, right? And I
yeah,
guess the good thing with the Bills defense is outside of once in a while they give up those big runs, which they cannot do. That just can't be that cannot happen on Sunday night, no matter what. But they're a bend don't break kind of defense, so they fit the mold of how to stop a Baltimore offense. But it's really hard to stop. It's kind of nearly impossible. It's Detroit's offense, like when the Bills played Detroit, they only stopped them twice. That was enough, right? Like it's
Yeah.
that type of game where one or two stops early on, one or two stops in the fourth quarter, force a turnover, force a fumble. That's how you kind of have to stop them. And it goes both ways, right? Like Baltimore's defense, if we were a Ravens podcast and you asked us, how do you stop the Bills offense? It's a different style of offense, but you lay out the same way. Like you got to force a turnover. You have to force a short field. You have to make them beat you like the long way. You just can't give up quick touchdowns. And I think if the Bills can limit the Ravens offense to long possessions, can't give up big runs, and look, you kind of sell out for the run. It's kind of what you kind of have to
Yeah.
do. I was talking about
You
the
have to do that.
Eagles Rams game on my podcast this morning. And look, the Eagles had 255 yards by Barkley last time they played the Rams. If you're the Rams, like you just sell out for Saquon Barkley. And if Jalen Hurts beats you through the air over and over again, okay, it happens. That's
Tip your cap.
But they
it's
have
kind of
AJ
like this.
Brown and
Like
Devonta Smith.
you
It's
sell out
like,
for
man,
Lamar, you
It's
sell out for,
picky. You got to pick your poison at that point.
it
You
doesn't
really
feel
do.
the same way with this for me.
if
To be
the
honest.
Ravens
I
beat
don't
you
know.
over the top without Zay Flowers, most likely, and if they can beat you through there, they deserve to win the game. That's kind of
Yes,
it's simple.
yes, they do.
But
Yeah.
if you're recording next week like a recap episode after a loss, and it's just Derrick Henry for 180
Don't
yards
you
and
say
Lamar
that.
Jackson
Don't
and
you say
100 yards, then you're going to be like, well, we got out coached. That's a scheme issue right there. If they beat you through
Right.
the air, they beat you through the air. So it's kind of sell out for the run and pick your poison.
Yeah. Mike, what would you have to say about this offense and how good it's been?
I mean, obviously, the heart and soul of this offense is Derrick Henry. I feel like 40, a big run is going to be inevitable in this game. It's just going to happen at least once. He's too good. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I was Buffalo, my game plan would be Derrick Henry, QB Spy, and Mark Andrews. I do not make Lamar Jackson throw the ball all day long. Cover up the middle of the field, those big chunk plays to Mark Andrews that we've seen for years. Try to neutralize Derrick Henry as much as you can, and you have a really good chance. I don't see Rashad Bateman just putting up a Gabe Davis, against the Chiefs-esque game where he's just going to go nuclear. I do not trust Lamar to beat us deep. I do not think that he can go tit for tat with Josh if this comes down to an absolute shootout. He's a great player. He has all the intangibles you want. It's just you're not going to see a 400 passing yard game from Lamar Jackson this week, and if that's what this game warrants for them to win, then they're going to lose. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with both of you guys here. Like, I think the way you want to play this offense is you basically want to sell out for the run. You said it before, Peter. Like, the Bills have to do that. Like, you have to, and I think you've seen it more in recent weeks where the Bills have been more reliant on Benford and Douglas in man coverage. And I think you like that matchup this week if Zay Flowers isn't playing. You can trust those guys to hold up and one-on-one against those. I mean, they're not going to be perfect every play.
Though. Put Benford on the island, go out and earn that contract. If
I
you're really
agree.
one of those top tier cornerbacks in the game, Zay Flowers is good, but he's stoppable.
Yeah, for sure. What this offense, their bread and butter is the run game. Like, that's where it starts. And like, if you're able to take away what they want to do most, I think you're in a good spot. Like, they're gonna put up points. They're gonna score a lot. Like, that's inevitable. That's how good this team is. It's the biggest game of the year for them, biggest game of the year for us. Like, they're gonna have their moments. But it's your job to, like you said, like, limit that. And I think it's most importantly, like, you can't get blown off the ball. And the biggest thing is what you see they try to do is a lot of gap scheme stuff. They condense it down. They want to create an opportunity where there's going to be a rush lane where Henry, he's not the quickest guy in the world. But if you give him a runway, if you give him time to get going, you're not stopping him. You're just not. It's impossible. He's a tank, and he's not going to stop him.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he had a run this year where it was like almost
once he gets
down,
it's
over.
Right. It's like like a landing strip,
I tweeted it a minute ago before I hopped on here, and I said the key to stopping like the read option offense and Derrick Henry, it's a couple things, right? Like your edge rushers have to set the edge. Like Greg Rousseau's great at that. Von Miller is not great at that, but Greg Rousseau's great at that. I bet you we see a lot of kind of Greg Rousseau. You got to be able to set the edge, right? Basically, keep Lamar in the pocket for the most part, and when you set the edge, it takes longer for Lamar to do something, which allows another defender to come. And then it's Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, and Teron Johnson staying with their leverage, right? Closing the gap and staying in their leverage. When you don't stay in your leverage and you don't set the edge, and both things don't happen, like you just said, Ben, it allows a little lane. And when Henry or even Lamar sees that lane, they're kind of gone. And then when they get downhill, you have a safety or a corner trying to tackle Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
That's not
You know,
going to work.
something the Bills have done for a few years now is sort of, it's called an odd mirror. So they're going to rush three, right? And then they'll put Milano on the line. They're not going to rush him, but they're going to essentially tell these three rushers on, it's a third down. It's an obvious, you're going to use this in obviously passing situations, but you're going to send these guys in there, basically screw pass rush lane integrity, force Lamar out of the pocket. And what Milano's job is to essentially is just aggressively pursue Lamar and force him to make a very quick decision. And if Lamar jukes him out, so be it. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And the Bills did it against Bo Nix, worked great. Bills have done it against Mahomes. They do that against sort of these athletic quarterbacks. And I expect this defensive line, they need to have a good game. Obviously, if they're not going to show up, they're losing this game. There's no other way around it. If they get blown off with the ball, it's a small line, I get it, but you got to come into this game. You got to match their energy. You got to
Ed
play with
Oliver's got to wake up
some
this
strength.
week.
It's a big
He's
game.
got to
I would honestly say this is the biggest game of his career because he is going to be asked to go up against a very difficult offensive line, and it's going to be a beating for him because
See, I
they're going to
think
get
this is the
hit.
biggest game of Rousseau's career because this game could determine if Rousseau is going to be a 12 or 13 million dollar player or a 17 to 18 million
Mhm.
dollar player.
Again, it falls back to the linebackers too. Like you think back to that Week 4 game, what they did a lot is a lot of motion. They confused the hell out of these linebackers. They were very inexperienced in that spot, and they're all out of spot. They were out of position, and it was just pure chaos. Like you have to be very disciplined in this game. You have to know your keys. You have to be on your guy at all times and trust your instincts. And it's important that you can't lose sight of that.
I think they need to play
So
zone
yeah.
this week. I think they need to. I mean, obviously, I know they're mainly
Mhm.
a nickel in a zone defense, but I think they need to steer away from man this week. I think if you play zone, take away the middle of the field, and just have
Yeah.
people in spots that they need to be, that is going to be the easiest way to do everything we just said.
I hope
Yeah.
we see less at times nickel defense in general. I think
Yeah.
they're not going to do it, but they might have to have a third linebacker on the field, being obviously Dorian Williams, because I think Dorian Williams, when he doesn't have to kind of command the defense or be that second linebacker, he's athletic. He goes
Mhm.
after the ball. He's super direct to the point, and I think he's kind of that guy. If you kind of just let him run around almost,
Plays with some freedom for
that's what I'm
sure.
saying. If you let him, if he's the third linebacker, he has that chance to play with a lot more freedom. Obviously, passing downs, you become a little dynamic, a little out of the sorts there. But I think if
Mhm.
you're able to get off nickel at times, it can slow down the run game. They don't like to, but you might have to do a
Yeah.
little bit of it.
Hot take,
Yeah.
very hot take. I know Dorian Williams has played great, and I know we haven't seen much of the guy that I'm going to mention, but a guy that's really great at just getting to the get run gaps that where he needs to be at any given moment is Andreessen.
Knew you were gonna say it. Knew you
But
were
I'm
gonna say it.
serious. Like maybe this is a game where you throw him out there every once in a while and just see what happens. I mean, we saw in that preseason game just him absolutely shoot into those gaps and just be unbelievable against the run. Maybe give that a shot.
I would if Milano was still struggling and we didn't see him progressing, I would say yeah, I'm all for it. But I think especially in this last game against
Oh,
Denver, he started the show,
he
he
was
had some of those instincts
he
back,
was good.
and
Oh,
he's
I
got some of
trust
his. It's
Milano
starting to come back.
100%. I mean, the thing that makes Milano great is his brain,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
you don't lose that no matter how many injuries you have. So, I mean, I trust him in every facet of him needing to do his job. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that if we have to move out a nickel, throw a third linebacker in there, I don't mind Dorian Williams, but part of me almost just feels more secure just seeing if Andreessen can respark some of that fire. I know it was preseason, but just being able to shoot those gaps and
Mhm.
maybe help stop the run game.
Yeah, the Bills they love staying in nickel though. I mean that's just it. They will use nickel in short yardage situations sometimes. They will not. They just love staying in nickel, and that's just what they love doing. And you got to adapt in this game. Have to adapt. You have to roll with the punches and play with some energy. Let's talk a little bit about the Ravens defense now, because this is a very intriguing unit who at one point in the year was pretty bad. And they've improved very much down the stretch here. A lot of it, stems from moving Kyle Hamilton back to the true safety spot, sort of letting him command the safeties and take away some of those deep chunk plays. They were 31st in passing yards allowed. Like they were able to sort of control things when they did that. And another player, they benched Marcus Williams. They put in 5'8", 150-pound safety Ardarius Washington, who just plays way big. He's like a chihuahua out there. I don't know if you guys saw the hit on Fryermuth on that. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was 3rd and 1 or something. It was crazy. Plays with a ton of energy. But this defense is good for sure. I wouldn't quite say elite, but they're good, and they present a lot of issues because they're really good at defending the run. Because they're huge, pretty much. I mean, you look across the D line; it's a big defensive line, and it's going to be up to the Bills to not fall behind on 1st and 2nd down and put yourself in that hole early. Um, but what do you guys think the Ravens defense does well? I'll start with you, Peter. Like, what kind of issues do you think they present to the Bills offense?
You mentioned the run defense, right? They were really good against Pittsburgh. I think they gave up 29 yards on the ground to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
29 yards on the ground to Pittsburgh, who obviously wants to run the ball. I don't think they're as dynamic. I don't think Najee Harris or Jalen Warren or James Cook. They're solid running backs, but they're not James Cook. But no, they can stop the run. And from the defense that we saw early in the year, right? Like if that was the same defense, we might be talking about a different game because Baltimore at times struggled on defense. They lost them a couple of games early in the year, kind of the reason they were in a divisional race against Pittsburgh at the end of the year. But no, they're super athletic. They're dynamic. They have a lot of veteran guys. They can get after the quarterback. Like they're a good defense. They're not a great defense. They don't fully scare me. Like I know their pass defense has evolved into a pretty solid pass defense. They still gave up what was it, 270 yards and 2 touchdowns to Russell Wilson, right? Like
yeah,
and I get it. Some of the game was out of reach, but it's still a third quarter game where the kind of tides kind of
playoff
turn
game
there. Yeah, the
matters.
playoff
Yeah,
game. It wasn't with 2 minutes left. He threw for 200 yards, right? Like it wasn't anything like that. But no, them being able to stop the run is the biggest challenge here, right? I know their pass defense has gotten better. Their pass defense could be the best in the league, and I think the Bills would not be scared of their pass defense. It's just who they
right.
are. Bills are as an offense, right?
because you got the man.
You got the man,
Yeah,
but the fact that they're elite against stopping the run is where it causes concerns for the Bills, just because of we saw, and it became an issue against Denver at times. The Bills became really predictable at times when they were
yeah,
running the ball on 1st downs, and it worked early, and you're like, okay, we're establishing the run, we're trying to get the offense going because Denver has an elite secondary, better than what we're going to see on Sunday from Baltimore, way better than what we're going to see from Baltimore on Sunday. But the Bills were like, we got to establish the run. You're like, great. James Cook had a great first half. Second half, you're like, okay, another 1st down run. And then you like another 1st down run. And then it was a 1st and a 2nd down run. And then Tony Romo said that kind of like, well, it's great to establish the run, but then you're only giving Josh Allen one chance. You
right.
kind of want to give
They
Josh Allen.
love that formation, putting like Matt Collins on the outside and
It
having that
works.
extra
Like
lineman.
if we start watching this game on Sunday night, and the Bills are running the ball down their throats against Baltimore, the Bills are going to win by double digits because
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
Baltimore's bread and butter. I don't see that happening on defense, but I think the Bills are going to want to establish the run if they can find a way to kind of get some running game going against this Baltimore rush defense. There's a chance, but Baltimore's going to want to stop the run. The Bills probably have to be less predictable, have to be a little bit more creative running the ball. They like to use Alec Anderson. They use this. They use 6 linemen the most in the National Football League. So
Yeah,
it's cool. I think the Ravens secondary is good. It's not great. It's not what they saw against Denver. The Bills are not going to see Denver's secondary probably again in the playoffs. I don't really know off the top of my head. I guess Philly, if they made the Super Bowl, has a good secondary, but I don't think Kansas City has Denver secondary. I don't think Houston has Denver secondary, but Baltimore can stop the run.
yeah, for sure. That's where a lot of my issues stem from. It's knowing how to marry the run and the pass together. And I think Joe Brady runs into a little bit of trouble sometimes doing that. And he's very, very good at doing that. Don't get me wrong. But I do think sometimes he's a little too, heavy on the run,
He
and
will not abandon the run.
he will not, and
I
and,
think
and
it
he
could be one
gets
of
into
those
trouble with
games where
that.
you need to
Yeah,
be honest.
and you get at the end of the day, you just got to trust 17 to do his job. And I think the Ravens, much like I think the Bills' game plan is essentially to say, let's just let Josh Allen beat us from the pocket. Like we don't want this team running on us because that is once they start doing that, forget it because it's going to be ugly. Like the Broncos started falling apart as soon as we started running the ball with some moderate success. It was just all downhill from there. And I think teams know that. They know that you need to just limit this run game, and that's what they want to do. And and the thing is, for me, if you do that first and second down run, let's say you don't get many yards, this team's extremely creative on third down. Think back to their defensive coordinator last year, Mike McDonald, and all the innovative stuff he was doing with this defense that landed him a head coaching job in Seattle. It's very impressive. They'll drop, they'll mug the line. They'll drop a safety out in the flat. They'll sometimes even drop the defensive tackle in the middle of the field. Like they get really creative with some of this stuff, and it's gonna be hard to put yourself in a position to succeed. But if I had to say there was one weakness on this defense, it is Brandon Stevens because he is probably the worst starting cornerback in the NFL. He is legit. I know he's an NFL player, and I feel bad for saying it because he's good enough to play football, right?
He's better than
But
us.
he's terrible. Like he is first in EPA per allowed per corners of I think 50 plus or more targets. He just gets picked on, and he is what teams look at and
Where
who
does he
they like
play?
to pick on. He is their boundary corner. He's the number 2 corner
So
with Humphrey
Mari
moving to the
Cooper,
slot.
kind of
So
Keon Coleman, Matt Collins
yeah,
kind of game.
and he really struggles against big body receivers. People will beat him at the catch point every time. And, Cooper can separate at the beginning of his route with his release. And that's somebody I expect him to go after quite often. So if you do get in that third down situation, I think you'll see a lot of the times the Bills are going to probably target him. And they're basically say, Keon Coleman, just make a play on this ball. Do not drop it because that's been sort of, shaky with him. That's somebody they're going to target because I don't necessarily they think they have the advantage with Shakir because Marlon Humphrey is pretty damn good, and he's also very good at defending the run. He's a lot like Taron Johnson in that sense. Now that he's like a true nickel corner, and then Nate Wiggins, their rookie out of Clemson's been
He's
pretty
very good
impressive
too.
as well. He plays with some speed. Who actually did pretty well against Keon in last year at Florida State versus Clemson. But yeah, like that, like I said, this team they present a lot of issues on third down. But if you're not putting yourself behind the sticks early, I think you'll be fine. I think you just got to stay on schedule, stay on your script, and just keep moving forward. You don't have to get overly cute. You don't have, and I think the most important thing is don't become too predictable. And I think that's just the key for me when you look at this Ravens defense because it's talented enough. But you know what you know who you are, and it's a damn good offense. So I'll go to you guys now. Who would you attack? Where would you attack this Ravens defense as well? I'm gonna go you, Mike. How would you attack them?
So I was just thinking about this. So we all talked about how the Ravens have a very good run defense, and
Mm,
primarily that comes down to one man, and that's Namdi Matabuke. That guy
yeah,
is a
beast,
bucket. That guy is amazing,
absolute
and
beast.
if you can avoid him at all costs, do it. If I'm Buffalo, converting on third down and how your tackles play this week are going to be massive to your offensive success. If Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown can have really great weeks, and you can get some runs to the outside and avoid the inside, that might really help establish this run game, establish some play action, open some things up, and just on third downs, just being able to convert at a moderate to consistent enough rate because we know that the Bills defense is generally not very good on third down, and
Yeah,
losing that is just not something that is going to be a recipe for success for this week.
yeah, for sure. What would you say, Peter?
Ben, you kind of took my point there. The boundary corners, right? I think if you have Keon Coleman and if you have Mari Cooper, you have to be able to kind of win at the point of attack there. And using a jump ball receiver, using kind of a vertical quasi threat in Mari Cooper, I think the Bills can kind of take advantage of the Ravens secondary. It's going to be hard to run the ball against them, but if you kind of go strength for strength and you think your strength's better than their strength, then so be it.
Yeah.
But at times, it's going to be the Josh Allen show. It's going to be Josh Allen mobile show. I think we're going to see a lot more kind of designed runs by the Bills with Josh Allen. Like you kind of see it not really happen in the regular season. Saw a little bit against Denver. I think it's like it's the playoffs, right? It's the divisional round, and
Yeah.
it's a close game. Your dog's at home at the moment. I think you're going to see
which
a
is
little bit more
crazy.
Josh Allen runs. It is crazy to be underdogs at home, but you know what? A little added motivation for the guys over there.
A
But
little
no,
chip on your shoulder.
I'm
yeah,
absolutely
Love
hammering
it.
that, by the way. Hammering
Yeah.
the shit out of it.
I don't blame you either because like this team hasn't lost well since that playoff game last year, but they're damn good at home and they've proven that. They're just a very difficult team to beat here.
I just think if Josh Allen really lays it all out on the line and just absolutely lays his soul on that field, that it is just at a higher level than Lamar. I do not think Lamar can keep up with that level. They're two, they're both great, but comparing them almost feels like apples to oranges. You know, like
Mhm.
everyone's just like, but look at the passing numbers, look at the passing touchdowns, and it's like the Ravens dominated last week, and Lamar had what 175 passing yards. Like I
Yeah.
just
it always comes back to you got to stop the run against Baltimore or
you have
limit
Have
the
to.
run.
you
Limit.
absolutely but I don't even care. I don't care what they do through the air this game. I fully let Lamar throw the ball, middle of the field, and the run. That's it.
Yeah.
That is all you have to do. Stop Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in the middle of the field. Keep Derrick Henry to like 130 rushing yards,
A lot of
and
yards.
you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, and what is
I
the
love the
like
yardage,
it's like
but
they're like
you know,
2-5 when he's rushes for under 100 yards or something like that. Like
which is hard to
the
do. It's very
the
hard to
proof
do.
is in the pudding. It is very hard to do. It's easier said than done, but the proof is in the pudding. Like if you do your job, sell out to stop the run and force them to be one dimensional, it's as simple as that. You got to just make it easier on yourself and not get beat because these guys. It's going to be very hard. Like, I mean, I don't know if you played football, Peter. I know Mike played football, but it's cold. You don't want to hit people as much. Taron Johnson's going to be getting hit every play, probably by a 300-pound fullback in Pat Ricard. And they like to they like to sprinkle in six offensive linemen. These guys are going to get hit. And you honestly, it's a test of willpower. Are you willing to keep fighting and do everything you can to stop this run? Because they will keep going at you. They will hammer you. And that's what this Ravens team is made of.
I think Henry's going to get his. It's just about
Mm-hmm.
how he gets his.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Josh Allen. I'm sure that's exactly what the Ravens are thinking. We know Josh Allen's going to have a great game, but
Yeah.
how?
So if we're gonna go around and say what we truly need to do to beat this team, which we've kind of done a little bit of already, I think a couple things stand out to me. And I go back to the Lions game, which I had referenced last week. The defense didn't play great, but I think their energy that they played with is something I want in this game. They came out and they loaded the boxes. They did everything they could to stop Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery in the running game, and they did. They didn't care if they got beat by Amon-Ra and Jared Goff. They were fine with that because they started the game off with a stop. They put themselves in a position, and I think if you do the same thing in this game, if you're able to start with a lead, you're good. Because if you start with the lead and Lamar has to play catch up with Josh Allen, I think you'll have the upper hand.
That's what
I
killed them
mean,
in the first game, though. It was like they
yeah,
immediately had that huge run for the touchdown, 3-and-out.
yes,
Then they scored next possession. Not, I
it's
think
game over from there.
what was it,
Yeah,
4th and 2 or something? And we decided to punt.
yeah,
It was 4th and 2.
yeah,
We decided to punt, and then at that point, you were down 2 scores, or yeah, because it was like 17-3 or something. At that point, it was like
yeah.
those first 3 possessions ended the game.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
need to come out with that energy, and like I said, that is probably my biggest point for our game plan this week. You need to come out swinging. You need to come out with you just can't get bullied. Like this team is gonna want to bully you, no matter who they're playing. The Ravens want to bully whoever they're across. That's just who they play, who they are. That's how good they are. But you have to be able to match some of that, and especially if there's no Zay Flowers, like put your make it easy on your secondary,
make Bateman beat
simplify it.
you.
Right. And if Lamar has this crazy game where he throws 450 yards and 4 touchdowns, we know it's possible with this defense. It's happened. You just got to tip your cap at that point because it's like, you know what? We did everything we could to stop the run. our secondary wasn't good enough. Our defense needs to just get better, and we need to spend some money there. And like I said, you got to go after Brandon Stevens. You got to attack the weaknesses. They provided good opportunities against the linebackers. Like I said last week with the Broncos linebackers, them struggling. You saw some big Kincaid plays. You saw a big Knox throw that he got down the sideline, and obviously Ty Johnson had probably the best game of his career. I would say because of the magnitude of it, other than the Lions game, just because of the big catch he made, the moment he made it, and
I think
then
we're going to see him a lot this week. I think if they
yeah,
cannot establish the run with James Cook, I think we're going to see a lot of Ty Johnson.
yeah, for sure. My last two notes here that I wanted to say before I'll let you guys take over here, and I already said this, but just don't give Henry that runaway. Just don't give him the runway to get going. Like, make Derrick Henry make a cut. Because if you make him move east to west, it's a lot easier to get him on the ground than when he has a straight shot and he keeps going and he's gone. And another thing I think is the slim victories, the small margin victories, special teams, creating turnovers, penalties, not having those self inflicted errors. This is a huge game. Those little things are going to add up and be very, very important. Justin Tucker's 32nd right now in the league in field goal percentage, which is insane.
Wow.
Last time he was in Buffalo for the playoff game, which when that year he was amazing, missed 2 kicks. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Mm-hmm.
This you need to find ways to win it, and Bills are plus 24 in the turnover battle. Ravens are plus 6. Find ways to keep doing that, and you'll have a good chance. I'll go to you, Peter. It's been a while since you spoke. What's your general game plan to doing this, to winning this game?
You got to be aggressive, right? We mentioned it earlier, but in that first matchup against the Ravens, the Bills' first drive of the game, I just went back to the play-by-play when you guys were talking, had 4th and 2 at midfield. The first drive of the game for both teams had 4th and 2 at midfield. They punted. Ravens go down.
It can't happen again.
Not go down. The next play is the 87-yard touchdown. The Bills followed up with a field goal, make it 7-3, but then give up a touchdown 14-3. They punt 14-3 again, and then 21-3. And then it's over, right? Biggest thing is
it's over.
The sequence right there. You have 4th and 2. You're at the 50-yard line. They were exactly at the 50-yard line. I double-checked that. And they punted. Next play, Derrick Henry takes it 87 yards. 87 yards for a touchdown. That, not going for it, and I get it's a regular season game and all that kind of fun stuff. That doesn't happen. Like, those are the plays you go for, and you don't get it. Like, you kind of live with it. We saw last week with Pittsburgh. And if you're a Steelers fan, who I get Mike Tomlin's great, but I get why they should probably move off Mike Tomlin. If you're a Steelers fan watching that game and how unaggressive they were in that game, as on the road, as basically 8.5, 9.5, whatever it was, point underdogs, and they weren't aggressive at all. Sean McDermott watches that and is like, okay, we're going to do the exact opposite. You have to be aggressive. Yeah. You have to be super aggressive. Same thing for the Ravens, right? Like, the Ravens are at 4th and 2 at midfield, and they punt the ball. Like, Ravens fans should start throwing stuff at their TV.
Someone's got to hold up his end of the bargain.
I think they've been better. They've been aggressive. They go for a lot more 4th down.
Definitely.
As the season has gone on.
He has that history. He has that history.
Does.
I mean, there's countless games where we could think back to where he's just kind of put his tail between his legs.
What changed my opinion on that was the Kansas City them going for it. Early in the year, old Sean kicks that field goal to go up 5. New Sean lets Josh Allen kind of do his thing. Bill score touchdown, they win the game, right? Like, they win the game. You're like, we're going to live and die with this play. We're going to win on this play, or we're going to probably lose on this play. That has to be that type of game. It probably comes down to something like that in this game, but you got to be aggressive. If you can establish the run, kind of going more in that holistic approach there, you establish the run and no big plays. Like, you can't have an 87-yard touchdown. You have to make them methodically drive the ball down the field and then bend, don't break defense. The Bills excel in red zone defense. They're really good at just not giving up touchdowns when teams kind of methodically go down the field. And the Bills are one of the best teams at forcing turnovers. We saw in the Rams game where they really couldn't force any turnovers. They struggled. But Kansas City, they forced 2 turnovers. Like, you got to be able to force a couple turnovers. If they can do that, they win. But I want Josh and I want Sean to be super aggressive. Not dumb aggressive. Yeah. There's a difference.
I think we know Josh is going to be aggressive. I mean, that's just who he is.
I mean more like the play calling and going for it and stuff like that. Fair. But yes, Josh will be aggressive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you really look at it, this team and Sean McDermott, I've seen a lot of growth from him this year. As
Mhm.
much as I want to be the guy to bash on him and say, oh, you shouldn't do that. Besides that Rams game, there's really maybe the Texans game if you want to go back to that one earlier
Yeah,
in the
that was
year,
rough.
but there's
That
not
was
been as
actually too
much
aggressive.
mismanagement. Yeah,
That was actually
right, right.
too aggressive when they
He
threw
has
the ball
not
3 times.
mishandled these situations. Like he's done better, and for the first time in 8 years, I've really seen true positive growth on a lot of these areas, and it gives me a little bit more confidence that maybe this is a little bit different this time around. And I think a lot of the media spoke on it. It's been a different Sean McDermott this year. He's kind of been more vocal. He's kind of just been more of himself, and I think he's sort of had a little bit of a different approach, and it's really helped this team out. And he's kind of given Josh Allen sort of he's Trent, our other co-host. He's said this before, but this team is an embodiment of Josh Allen, and I think he also embodies that a little bit as well with the nature that they are calling plays and how they're scripting these games. I wanted to ask you guys a question when I look at this game because these are two very, very talented teams. Do you guys think? I'll start with you, Peter. Do you guys think this is going to be this track meet where both these teams are scoring 35, 40 plus points, or do you expect these offenses to slowly, methodically, and try to run the ball and play their brand of football? Which one do you expect?
I expect a methodical. I expect the low
Yeah.
scoring game. I did my score prediction this morning, 24-21 Bills, and I know we're supposed to
Okay.
do that at the end. I just smacked my mic. But we're supposed to do that at the end, right? But that kind of shows you where I'm thinking. I look, outside of the game against Kansas City where the 13 seconds where everyone was just got on drugs and started throwing touchdowns and touchdowns and touchdowns, and no one decided to play defense in the last 2 minutes of the game. Most games, like those big time games and big time playoff games, are not really crazy high scoring. Against Kansas City, they're kind of methodical, right? Like teams are
Hmm.
being smart. Both teams are great teams. I don't expect a track meet. I expect some defense. I expect people because no one's talking about the defenses, right? Like if you
Yeah,
flip on First Take, if you flip on Get Up, if you flip on anything from Fox Sports, all that kind of stuff, national media brands, no one's like, let's talk about the defense. Well, we probably and we did, but you probably should talk about the defenses on both sides of the ball because I do think the defenses have a huge factor in this game.
for sure.
I think it's methodical. I think it's probably the team that makes that big mistake kind of loses this game. If it's a special teams
Yeah,
mistake, if it's a turnover where you kind of flip the field where you're at your own 20 and you fumble the ball and you give an offense a short kind of field, that's going to lose a game in this type of game. I don't think it's a track meet. I think somewhere in the 20s. Look, it could be 100%, but if I had to predict, I'm thinking middle to low 20s.
yeah. I'd agree with you in terms of mid to low 20s, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I just think that's not how these teams want to play. I don't think they want it to be that kind of game. Neither of these teams want it to be that kind of game. Their brand of football, we've seen it all year, is run the ball, control the clock, play your style of football, and sort of the discussion with Lamar and Josh Allen with the coaches Todd Monken and Joe Brady and what they have done with these quarterbacks respectively is essentially put them in better situations and not ask them to have to be Superman as much. And that's been, I think, the best thing Joe Brady has done for this team since he's been their offensive coordinator. And Ravens fans will probably say the same thing about Todd Monken. They don't want them to be making crazy plays. They want to make it they want them to make those plays when it's necessary, absolutely necessary. They don't want it to be the baseline of your offense. Mike had said that in the preseason, and it was a great point because the Bills essentially took that out of their offense, and I think it's really made them a very well balanced and structured and sound offensive unit. And they're not going to be the flashiest offense in the world, but they get results, and so do the Ravens. They probably are a little bit more flashier, but that's just how these teams want to play, and that's how I expect it to go. I'll let you go, Mike. What do you have? What do you think? Track meter, slower,
I do think this
methodical
is
kind
going
of
to be
game?
a track meet because it's going to have to be. Honestly, I if I had to put money on it, I do not think the Bills are going to be able to run the ball at a high clip this game. I just think
Okay.
Denver's run defense is very good, and I'm not saying it's going to be completely neutralized, but I don't think there's going to be like this 55-45 split where it's like, all right, we're going to establish both and just have this balance in our offense. I think this is going to be one of those games that, you know what, some people don't think Josh Allen's going to should be the MVP. It's time to go out and prove that you are the MVP, and I'm going to go win this game, and we're going to take this to Arrowhead for part 4.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, I personally, and I think the Bills should want this to be a high scoring game because I just, like I said, I just think they have more of the ability to take it that extra mile to just go out and win a game like that rather
Yeah.
than the Ravens.
We're just counting out the Texans. We're just counting out the Texans. We're
No,
going.
believe me, I would love if
We're going
they
to Arrowhead.
here.
Yeah.
Like they
Defense is
are
dangerous.
Well, no. When I did my preview this morning, I talked about it. Like the Texans' game plan is basically kind of force 2 turnovers, kind of just get after Mahomes. Mahomes is 8-7 when he throws 2+ interceptions.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the Texans are 12-2 when Stroud throws for over 250 yards. But hey, let's not kind of Texans are. I looked at some stat. They're really good in that 4:30 window.
It's I
yes,
keep
but
going
we're
back to
talking
Texans.
about Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I want to.
I picked the Chiefs to win the game. Don't get me wrong.
The last time the Chiefs played the Texans in the playoffs, yes, they had Deshaun, but if I'm not mistaken, they were down 21 points, and then by
that
the
was
start
that
of the fourth quarter,
2019.
they were up by.
Yeah.
He is unbelievable, and I
Yeah.
can't. I only bet against him when he plays against Buffalo because, I just want to
The
beat him.
Chiefs aren't good against the spread this year. They have not been because they've not been good because they played a lot of close games.
They're 9.5 point favorites or 7.5, something like that.
Yeah,
I think it's 6 or 7. It's one of
If
the two.
it's 6, I will genuinely. I think it's 7.5. It's at least got to be a Todd.
I think it's 8.5 actually. I believe
8.5. Okay.
And I took Texans to cover.
It is 8.5.
I would take the Texans to cover too.
Chiefs to win.
The only thing that scares me really with the Texans, and I keep going back to it, and as good as Patrick Mahomes is, Chris Jones is a freaking monster. And that offensive line is terrible.
And they have no weapons.
I just don't.
Oh, I don't think the Texans win, but
Joe Mixon is the heart and soul of that offense, and I don't see him having that massive game.
The defense
they're going to need that
defense
defense
in the
to
game.
be
The defense will keep them in the game long enough for you you watch the game in the third quarter and you'd be like, oh crap, like the Texans might have a
Texans have a chance.
But they're going to
lose. Really surprised. I would be thoroughly impressed with CJ Stroud if that was the case.
I don't know if it's CJ Stroud for the defense. I think the defense is that good. They can get after the quarterback, and the Chiefs.
I mean,
Chiefs tackles have not been good.
I hope we see an upset because I want the AFC title.
Well, I think both teams do because I think both teams,
Bills and
Ravens think
for sure, especially with how the Ravens played against them.
Yes, I think
both teams in Houston. Yeah. Back to the Bills and the Ravens now, because there's a couple things I wanted to get into before we wrap up here, but we do it every episode, and we kind of list X factors for each team. Last week I said Reggie Gilliam and a couple other players, and this week I'm gonna do a fullback again, Mike. I have to, and it's Pat Ricard for the Ravens. Not many teams have a 320-pound fullback that can move like Pat Ricard. It's very difficult. They use him a lot. The Ravens have always had a really good fullback. Think back to Juszczyk. They have just always produced fullbacks for some reason. They like him a lot, and he is going to be somebody that Taron Johnson's probably going to have to meet in the hole, and it's not going to be fun for Taron Johnson, who he's obviously small, but he plays bigger than his size. And even you look at the linebackers, Bernard's a smaller linebacker. He's like 220 maybe.
Ricard's
soaking
just
wet.
A stick.
He will clear out people. I will see clips of guys coming across the field, meeting him in the gap, and it's like they just get sent into the shadow realm. He just deletes people, and I would say he's absolutely an X factor because he's the reason Derrick Henry gets those runways where he opens up just enough space for Derrick Henry to get going, and he clears out a linebacker, and then you're asking, Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp to bring down Derrick Henry running at full speed. No, thank you.
When you're following up that with Derrick Henry, they just got to be thinking, "Damn, like this.
What are we gonna do?"
This just sucks.
Yeah, it's tough. This team's very, very complete. It's a very good roster. For the Bills, though, my X factor is Ed Oliver. If Ed Oliver has a big game, I go back to that Lions game, probably his best game of the year, playing a very, very good center in Frank Ragnow. Absolutely destroyed him in that game. Ed Oliver was phenomenal. He stacked and shedded him. He blew him off the ball. He was getting in the backfield. If you can do that against Tyler Linderbaum, who I think is a very underrated center in this league, and cause disruption, get in the backfield, slow this rushing attack down, the Bills they're gonna make their money, and that's why you paid Ed Oliver to show up. And he obviously didn't have the production you wanted him to have this season. There's guys, some of these unsung heroes on this defensive line. He's a guy like Austin Johnson. Last week, he had a rep against Quinn Miners. I don't know if you guys see it. It was surfacing on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. He blew him off the ball. Like they have those flashes where it's like, okay, you can disrupt, you can do this, but can you do this on a consistent basis? And that's a big question with this line. What defensive line are we getting this week? Are we getting the defensive line that doesn't show up and gets blown 5 yards off the ball? Or are we getting the guys that are going to play with some hunger and strike fear into the other opponent? So I look at the defensive line, specifically those defensive tackles. Mike, who are your X factors for the Bills and the Ravens?
So I have 1.5 X factors for the Ravens
Okay.
and Bills. So my main key X factor for the Ravens is going to be Isaiah Likely. The guy is
I
the
like that
guy's
one.
just fantastic. I mean, he's a great run blocker and an unbelievable just route running tight end and can just make
Mm-hmm.
huge bailout plays with Lamar. I think that's going to be a guy you really have to keep an eye on. And my slight X factor for the Ravens is Roger Rosengarten. I know everyone's
Oh,
probably seeing the
good
clip where
one.
he asked TJ Watt for his jersey and he was like, I'm a nobody, but he's showing that he's a somebody. He's showing that he can really play. And I think I think he could give, whoever's on the outside there a really hard time
Mm-hmm.
and, maybe take advantage of, that young player, but he's just been stand up thus far and it'll be a really
Mm-hmm.
interesting matchup to see there. And I think the biggest X factor for the Bills going into this game is going to be James Cook. Can James Cook, if they can't establish the run, just find ways to make plays?
Mm-hmm.
Can he find, can he turn absolutely nothing into something? Can he turn a negative run into a 5 yard carry? Can he make key receptions? Can he run block or pass block? Sorry, run block. Um, I just think he's going to be really important to the success for this
Mm-hmm.
game if the Bills want to cruise their way to victory.
Yeah, if you get those extra plays from him to elevate the run game and open up this offense, I agree. It will be absolutely awesome for the Bills offense. What would you say, Peter, for as far as X factors go for these teams?
We'll start with the Ravens. I think Rashad Bateman is a
Mm-hmm.
major X factor. I think because Zay Flowers probably doesn't play, and the fact that the Bills are going to sell out for the run and they're going to sell out for the middle of the field for, like you said, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, someone on the Ravens receiving corps is going to have to make a play on the outside. That probably will have to be Rashad Bateman. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think if you're a Ravens, you need some sort of playmaker on the outside. If Zay Flowers doesn't go, that probably is Rashad Bateman. And I think if they do kind of get a big performance out of Rashad Bateman, wow, this offense becomes even kind of harder to stop, and it puts the Bills at a huge disadvantage. So I like Rashad Bateman for the Ravens. For the Bills, I'm going to go defensive player. I'm going to go Teron Johnson.
Yep.
And I mentioned earlier about the fact that how you stop the read option, right? And you set the edge with the edge rushers, but then the guys in the middle of the field, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and then Teron Johnson have to kind of stay their leverage, stay their gaps. And Ben, you kind of mentioned Teron Johnson's going to get hit around, right? He's going to get roughed up. It's going to be tough for him, and he's going to be on the field a lot because they stay in nickel. If he has kind of that vintage Teron Johnson performance or that really elite Teron Johnson performance, it bodes well for the Bills because he's stopping the run, he's stopping the pass, he's doing kind of what makes him so special. And the reason that the Bills run nickel so much is because they're like, oh crap, we want Teron Johnson on the field. He's that good. That's why
Yeah.
they run nickel. And if they're going to stick with nickel against this run offense from the Ravens, Teron Johnson is probably the biggest X factor on the Bills defense.
He
Yeah.
gets another 90-yard pick six this week. Literally retire his jersey.
I agree.
Probably doesn't
Like,
have to make another play ever again.
Yeah.
which is
I mean,
okay. Just retire that man's jersey. No one will ever wear that number ever again. That guy is.
Stadium would be going nuts.
yeah, it'd be crazy. I I did not. Somebody, I just wanted to throw his name in the hat. It was Matt Milano because everybody knows how good Matt Milano is, but uh, the role he has in this game is also massive. You know, he's probably going to be the designated spy on Lamar, and he is going to be asked to use every ounce of athleticism he has in his body to play sideline to sideline with this kind of offense. He's going to have to trust his eyes. He's going to have to, stay disciplined and know what gap to attack. And it's very important for him to have a good game. And really, at the end of the day, we like to pick out X factors, guys that might be unsung heroes and stand out. But at the end of the day, it takes 11 guys to beat this offense because everybody's got to know their role. Everybody's got to be disciplined, and all it takes is one little slip up, and this Derrick Henry's going 60 yards the other way, and it's hard. It's hard to stop. So as we wrap up here, one last question I had for you guys before we give our score predictions.
Yes, Curtis Samuel
If
will score a touchdown this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't give you your flowers because you did say Curtis Samuel was gonna score a long touchdown last week,
I did.
and I'll give you your flowers. It was pretty impressive,
It's a
Mike.
good pick.
You called it, and it was good, and it was pretty fun. But anyways, if you guys think the Bills will win, I'm pretty sure we all have said that the Bills are gonna win. What gives you the confidence that they're going to win? If not, what deters you? I'll go to you first, Peter. What gives you the confidence that the Bills can pull this out despite being home underdogs?
Easy answer is Josh Allen, but let's not make it easy. I'm going to say the home field. Bills have been great at home. They haven't lost at home. I'm knocking on wood. If you heard that, I am knocking on wood, so no one get freaking mad at me here. But yeah, the home field advantage. I think that's the main X factor. I think the fact that they're home dogs is kind of nuts because I would think the line would be whoever's home, give them a point or two, call it a day. Like that's what I kind of
They
would think.
initially did. It was initially
Yeah,
built.
It was.
So
It was a 3-point swing in like a day.
So
it was
basically,
crazy.
they're saying if this game was in Baltimore, it's closer to a 3-point to almost 3.5-point favor for the Ravens, which would shock me as well. But no, home field advantage. The crowd's going to be there. I'm going to be at the game. I'm driving up Sunday morning to be at. I've went to a game earlier this year, but I've never been to a playoff game before, so I'm stoked about that. I'm going to freeze my what off, but that's all good. If they win, it doesn't matter. I can freeze everything off. But no, I think home field advantage. I think getting the run game going and keeping the crowd in it. You see it in a lot of sports when you lose home field advantage really quick if you don't make plays. And I think you got to start hot. You got to keep the crowd in it. They'll be in it for the most part, obviously. But I like home field advantage. Obviously, Josh Allen's the easy answer, but anybody can say that.
Yeah,
that's mine.
Well, do you want to go more into that, Mike?
I'm going to be honest. The thought of this game is just taking my soul. I haven't felt this level of magnitude in so long, like just this passion about a game. And if I'm going to trust anyone with that, it's going to have to be Josh Allen. And he's just amazing. I mean, everyone knows it, but I feel like there's 4 plays a game where I'm just like, he is so good. He is just so damn good. And he's going to have to go out and have one of those iconic performances to really just put this team on its back and take them to where it needs to go. The season begins and ends with him, and I'm just going to ride that wave.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. And I look at the playoff track record, and that matters to me a lot, knowing that Lamar has played the way he has in the playoffs. Like, are you going to have a hiccup again, Lamar? Like, is it inevitable? Is it going to happen again? Is it this game?
He can't,
like,
because he's going against Kratos this week.
A crazy stat I saw.
God amongst men.
A crazy stat I saw was like Lamar Jackson has never thrown a passing touchdown on the road in a playoff game. He's never done it.
Knock on wood.
He's rushed for one. I mean, he's rushed for a few. And look, he'll probably get one this game. But that matters to me. Like, knowing that this guy has not delivered in any road playoff games in his career. He usually, I mean, I know Baltimore gets cold, but this is Buffalo. This is next level. Like, teams aren't familiar with this. Yes, I want to say it's 50% chance right now. Teams aren't familiar with this environment. The Bills thrive when it's like this at this time of the year. Think back to the Patriots game, how cold it was. The Niners game, when the weather gets really crappy, The Bills love it, and it just plays right into the strength of this team. And yes, having home field advantage matters a lot. And I think a lot of people, including the bookies, are overlooking that. The Bills have been phenomenal at home. It's a great atmosphere. These fans are crazy. It's loud, and that's going to strip away some of the communication that Lamar is going to have offensively. And look, it matters to me. And another thing I think people are overlooking is the turnovers the Bills create. They're plus 24 in turnover differential. That is insane. They don't turn it over. They get like 1 or 2 a game, and they're so good at it. And I expect that to be the same here in this game. And the Ravens, you think back to that game they lost in Pittsburgh, right? Tough environment, not the greatest conditions, right? I don't know if it was raining, but it's just sloppy, right? They turn the ball over like 3 or 4 times. They miss field goals. They basically just they defeated themselves. And if you have that, a little bit of that sprinkled in with the magic that we already have on offense, I have to say that the Bills are going to win this game. I just do. It feels like destiny to me. And I know it's crazy and very well could lose this game, but it just feels that way. So without further ado, I'll go around. We'll give our score predictions. Peter, you said it was 24-21 Bills, did you say?
Yeah, I said 24-21. Oh, yeah, 24-21, kind of that methodical,
Okay.
kind of quasi low scoring game.
Yeah. What would you say, Mike?
34-28 Bills.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of in the middle of you guys. I said 27-24 Bills. I honestly think this isn't going to be this crazy scoring game, and we've kind of gotten into that already. But I just expect it to be. They're gonna score, but it's not gonna be out there. This is
I
playoff
don't think it's
football.
going
I
to
expect
be
it.
42-38 or
Yeah,
42-40. I don't.
it's gonna get locked down a little bit. It should. You would hope, but
Because
We'll
both
see.
teams,
We'll see.
two good teams going up
We'll
against each
see.
other, two good coaches,
Yeah.
it's tough to get a high scoring game.
Yeah, for sure. Two good coaches that both fan bases absolutely hate when they are in the playoffs every year. They call for them to be fired. So whoever loses this game, they're going to want their coach to be fired. But yeah, that pretty much covers it from all of us. It was, again, a great pleasure to have you on again, Peter, as always. And we're hopefully looking forward to doing another episode next week regarding the Bills and the AFC Championship. That is absolutely what I'm praying for. It's a fun time of the year. It's a stressful time of the year. And it just makes me think what a time it is to be a Bills fan. And it's just awesome to see what's taking place right now with Josh Allen and this team, and a team that we did not have these expectations for going in the year. So I do want to reflect on a little bit, and it's been a good year for Sean McDermott and this team. So yeah, again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you may listen to. Links will be in the description. Peter, plug your stuff so everybody can find you and where they know where to listen to you.
Yeah, follow me at DiBiase Peter on X. I'm trying to get to 4,000 followers. So if you follow me, that'd be awesome. But that's where you can get all my content. I have a podcast called the Talking Sports Podcast. All that's in that link, as always. But yeah, follow me over there. You can see all my stuff. Really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course. And you're obviously you guys do a great job over there, and you guys should definitely check it out. Really good stuff. Very consistent, and he works hard. So thanks for coming on again, Peter.
Appreciate it.
Mike, you have a good night. Peter, you have a good night, and everybody, go Bills.
Go Bills.